Imagine for a moment that you woke up tomorrow and every single thing you were promised about the future simply vanished overnight. The job you thought was secure, gone. The money in your bank account, worth half of what it was yesterday. The women who spent years telling you that they don't need a man, suddenly desperate, confused, and terrified because the system that replaced you just ran out of other people's money. Most men reading this right now already feel it in their gut. Something is off. Something is collapsing. And by the time we reach the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why millions of men have already checked out, why they are never coming back, and why the people who scream the loudest for men to leave are about to discover what life actually looks like when men listen to them. Stay until the very last minute because I'm going to show you the cold, hard numbers and the undeniable patterns that prove winter has already begun for a huge part of the population, and most of them still have no idea it is coming. If you want more raw, no filter, angry guy breakdowns like this the second they drop, smash that like button right now. Share this video with every man you know who still hasn't woken up. Subscribe, and most importantly, hit the notification bell and select all so you never miss a single upload. Every new video is a wake up call, and you do not want to be the last one to hear it. Also, if you want to bulletproof your finances and learn how to actually protect and grow real wealth in the middle of all this chaos, go check out Angry's Crypto Academy right now. The full step by step system that shows regular guys how to buy, store, trade, and protect their assets is linked in the description below. Thousands of men are already inside building their fortress. Click that link and get started today. And if these videos are hitting home and you want to keep the Angry Guy channel firing on all cylinders, you can buy me a Red Bull through the link in the description. Every can keeps the truth coming. I appreciate every single one of you who throw some fuel in the tank. Now let us talk about what is really happening out there. Men can feel it because men were built to feel it. Nature wired us completely differently than women for one simple reason: survival. When a threat appears on the horizon, men notice the pattern first. We see the storm clouds when they are still 200 miles away. Women, on the other hand, are wired to read emotional patterns inside the tribe: who is upset, who feels safe, who is about to start drama. That skill kept the group together when we all lived in caves. But reading macro level danger, economic collapse, civilizational decline, that is the male operating system. And right now, millions of men are looking around and realizing the entire operating system of the West is flashing red. Every metric is screaming the same message. Real wages have been falling for most men since the 1970s. Home ownership for men under 35 has collapsed. Marriage rates have plummeted to historic lows. Birth rates in every developed country are now below replacement level. Male labor force participation is at Great Depression levels in many Western nations. Suicide rates for men are through the roof. And yet, everywhere you look, the narrative is still that men are the problem, men are privileged, men need to do better, men need to man up. After 50 straight years of hearing that message, something predictable finally happened. Men listened. They walked away, not in anger at first. Most of them walked away quietly. They stopped dating. They stopped chasing. They stopped simping. They stopped getting married. They stopped working 80-hour weeks to impress women who already told them they were disposable. They went minimalist. They stacked cash. They learned skills. They built small circles of brothers who actually have their back. And most importantly, they stopped volunteering to be the mule that carries the entire system on its back. And now the cracks are starting to show for everyone else. You see it every single day on social media. Women who spent the last decade making TikToks about how they don't need a man, how they are the table, how men are trash, how high value women deserve the world without giving anything in return. Those same women are now making tearful videos about how rent is too high, groceries are too expensive, dating apps are dead, good men don't exist anymore, and they simply cannot figure out why everything got so hard all of a sudden. They actually say on camera that they cannot afford to be single anymore. Think about that sentence for a second. They cannot afford to be single. The ideology that told them independence was the ultimate goal just collided headfirst with economic reality, and reality is winning. Because here is the part nobody wanted to say out loud: women never actually replaced men with independence. They replaced men with the state. For decades, the deal was simple: men build everything, invent everything, maintain everything, defend everything. And in exchange, they get a family, respect, and a reason to keep going. Then the rules changed. The state stepped in and said to women, "You don't need a husband anymore. Just vote for us, and we will tax him on your behalf. We will give you welfare, affirmative action, subsidized housing, free education, no fault divorce laws that let you keep the house and the kids and half his income, and 1,000 other transfer mechanisms that quietly move resources from men to women, whether those men agree to it or not." And for a while it worked. Women got to live the lifestyle previous generations of men had to bleed for without most of the responsibility. They got to travel. They got to get degrees that often led nowhere. They got to ride the carousel well into their 30s while telling men they weren't good enough. And the entire time, the productive class of men kept working 60, 70, 80 hours a week to keep the lights on for everybody. But something changed around 2018 to 2019. Men started waking up en masse. The red pill community exploded. The manosphere went from fringe to mainstream almost overnight. Podcasts talking about men walking away started getting tens of millions of downloads. And the message was always the same: if the game is rigged against us, stop playing the game. And that is exactly what happened. Marriage rates collapsed harder than they ever have in recorded history. In the United States, the percentage of men under 30 who have never been married went from 60% in 1990 to over 80% today. The dating apps that women relied on to get endless validation and free dinners started drying up because men stopped swiping. OnlyFans launched, and millions of men said, "Cool, I'll pay for the fantasy and keep the rest of my money." Cryptocurrency and remote work exploded at the exact same time, giving men financial and geographic freedom most of them never had before. A man can now live in Thailand or Colombia or Eastern Europe on $2,000 a month, work 20 hours a week, and have zero incentive to come back to a society that hates him. And the numbers do not lie. In 2024, the labor force participation rate for prime age men in America hit the lowest level since the 1930s. That is not laziness, that is a strike. Men are quietly going on strike. They are refusing to be the disposable utility that the system needs to keep printing money for everyone else. And the moment enough men do that, the whole house of cards starts to wobble. Because the state is broke. Every Western government is drowning in debt they can never pay back. The United States alone is $36 trillion in debt and adding another $2 trillion every single year. Social Security is projected to be insolvent by 2033. Medicare is worse. The pension systems in Europe are collapsing. The only reason any of this worked for as long as it did is because there was an army of hardworking men generating surplus value that could be taxed and redistributed. When those men downshift or leave the country or simply stop producing at the same level, the entire transfer system grinds to a halt. And women are about to feel it first and hardest. They were sold the ultimate fantasy that they could have everything men used to provide without having to provide what men used to receive in return: respect, loyalty, children raised in a stable home, appreciation, peace. None of that was part of the New Deal. The New Deal was: give us your vote and we will replace your husband with bureaucracy. And for a couple of generations, it almost worked. But bureaucracies eventually run out of other people's money. And when that happens, the only people left holding the bag are the ones who thought the party would never end. That is why you are seeing this bizarre wave of videos from women in their late 20s and 30s suddenly talking about how lonely they are, how they were lied to, how all the good men are gone, how they just want a nice guy who will treat them right. They are not evil. Most of them genuinely believed the propaganda. They were told from kindergarten that they could have it all, that men and women are the same, that traditional roles were oppression. Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now. And now the ground is shifting under their feet and they have no idea why. But men know why. Wait, we watched it happen in real time. We watched family court destroy our fathers and our brothers. We watched false accusations turn men into felons overnight. We watched HR departments and college tribunals operate on believe women policies that assumed guilt until proven innocent. We watched child support systems garnish wages from men who never even got custody or visitation. We watched alimony laws that forced men to finance the lifestyles of women who left them for someone else. And after decades of that, a critical mass of men looked at the risk reward ratio and said, no thanks. The juice is no longer worth the squeeze. And nature does not care about feelings. Nature does not care about empowerment slogans. Nature only cares about incentives and consequences. Men were told for 50 years that we were no longer necessary. And now a huge percentage of us have taken that message to heart and peacefully exited stage left. We are not angry anymore. Anger is what you feel in phase 1. This is phase 3, indifference. And indifference is far more dangerous than anger because angry men can still be negotiated with. Indifferent men are already gone. The old saying was, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. The new reality is the modern world hath no future, like a society full of men who simply do not care anymore. And we are just getting started. Let us paint the picture of what is coming next, because most people still think this is just a phase, a temporary tantrum, a bunch of guys sulking in their basements until the world apologizes and everything goes back to normal. That is not what is happening. What is happening is the single largest coordinated withdrawal of male effort, male resources, and male attention in human history, and it is accelerating every single day. The men who figured it out 5 years ago were the early adopters. The men waking up today are the mainstream. By the end of this decade, the majority of productive men under 40 will have restructured their entire lives around one core principle: minimum viable participation in a system that treats them as disposable utilities. And when that happens, the entire post war social contract does not just crack, it shatters. Look at the economic data like it is a crime scene. Every major Western economy is now dependent on three things to keep the lights on: endless money printing, endless immigration to replace the children they never had, and endless male labor to pay the taxes that fund everything else. All three of those pillars are collapsing at the same time. Central banks have printed so much money since 2008 that inflation is no longer a risk, it is a permanent feature. Real purchasing power for the average man has been in decline for 50 years straight. The immigration floodgates were open to patch the demographic hole created by 50 years of feminism and birth control. But now even the immigrants are having fewer children, and the native populations are openly hostile to the entire project. And the tax base, the army of hardworking men who used to show up every day and grind because they believed it would pay off with a family and a future, that army is quietly laying down its tools. The numbers are brutal. In the United States, the labor force participation rate for men aged 25 to 54, prime working years, is now lower than it was during the Great Depression. Let that sink in. During the worst economic crisis of the 20th century, more men were willing to work than are willing to work today. That is not a recession. That is a revolution disguised as apathy. Men are not unemployed, Because there are no jobs. Many of them are unemployed because they looked at the jobs on offer, looked at the take home pay after taxes, looked at the cost of rent, looked at the dating market, looked at the family court statistics, and quietly decided that working 45 hours a week to finance a life that hates them is no longer a good trade. And the response from the system has been revealing. Instead of asking why millions of capable men have opted out, the corporate media and the political class immediately started shaming them. They invented new labels: NEETS, incels, basement dwellers, losers, failures, man children. They ran endless articles about the crisis of men not wanting to work anymore. They never once asked the obvious question: what exactly broke in society that caused millions of rational, healthy, capable men to look at the contract and say no? Because if you have to shame people into fulfilling their end of a deal, the deal was already garbage. Meanwhile, the women who spent the last 15 years telling men exactly where they could go are now discovering that the state replacement husband they were promised is filing for bankruptcy. Every welfare state in the West is mathematically doomed. The promises made in the 1960s and 1970s were based on a demographic pyramid that no longer exists. Back then, you had 5 or 6 workers paying taxes for every retiree collecting benefits. Today, in most Western countries, that ratio is 2 to 1 and falling fast. By 2040, in many European countries, it will be 1 worker per retiree. That is not sustainable. That is a slow motion train wreck. And the only reason it has not exploded yet is because governments keep borrowing trillions of dollars every year from future generations that will never be born. So when women start posting videos saying they cannot afford to live alone anymore, what they are really saying is that the greatest wealth transfer in human history is finally running out of other people's money. For decades, men were forced to subsidize women in 3 ways: directly through dating and marriage, indirectly through taxes that funded government programs disproportionately used by women, and culturally through the expectation that men would always step up and fix things when everything fell apart. All 3 of those subsidy pipelines are now closing at the same time. Dating subsidy? Gone. Men are not paying for first dates anymore. They are not moving women into their apartments anymore. They are not buying engagement rings anymore. Marriage subsidy? Collapsed. The median net worth of a single man in his 30s is now higher than the median net worth of a married man with children in the same age group. Think about how insane that reversal is. For all of human history, marriage made men richer because it gave them a stable home base and a reason to build. Today, marriage makes men poorer because it is a wealth extraction machine with a 50% failure rate and lifetime alimony in many states. Tax subsidy? Drying up fast. When men downshift to part time work, or move to cash businesses, or relocate to lower tax countries, or simply live on 80 cents of every dollar so the government cannot touch the rest, the revenue that used to flow into welfare programs shrinks. And the cultural subsidy, the expectation that men will always be the ones to run into the burning building, to work the dangerous jobs, to volunteer for the military, to keep society running when everything hits the fan. That subsidy is evaporating too. Men are looking around and realizing that the same society that called them toxic for existing is now demanding they sacrifice everything to save it. The answer coming back from millions of men is a very calm, very cold no. And the most fascinating part is how predictable all of this was. Nature never needed feminism to tell men and women how to behave. Nature only needed incentives. When the incentives align, men build civilizations. When the incentives flip, men walk away and civilizations crumble. Every great empire in history that collapsed went through the exact same pattern. The men at the bottom realized the game was rigged. They stopped playing. The elite lost their ability to extract resources, and the whole structure came down. Rome, Athens, you name it. The names change, the technology changes, the ideology changes, but the pattern never does. What makes this collapse different is the speed and the scale. Thanks to the internet, men all over the world woke up at roughly the same time. A guy in Australia can watch a podcast from Miami. A guy in Germany can join a Discord started in Toronto. A guy in Poland can move to Thailand tomorrow and be welcomed by a community of hundreds of men who already made the jump. The information is moving at light speed, and the coordination is happening without any central leadership. It is organic, it is unstoppable, and it is peaceful, which makes it even more terrifying to the people who used to be in control. Because you cannot negotiate with indifference. You can shame an angry man back into line. You can promise a desperate man a better deal. But you cannot do anything with a man who has already achieved peace in his own life and simply does not care about your crisis anymore. That is the stage we are in now. Millions of men have reached escape velocity. They have their health, their money, their brotherhood, their purpose, and their freedom. They are not coming back to save a society that spent 50 years telling them they were the problem. And the women who are just now starting to feel the cold are about to learn what winter really means. They were told that men would always want them because biology. They were told that the thirst would never end. They were told that they held all the cards because sex and children. What they were never told is that male desire is not a constant. It is a survival mechanism. When sex and reproduction increase a man's chances of survival, his desire goes through the roof. When sex and reproduction become a direct threat to his survival, his desire shuts down completely. That is not ideology. That is biology doing exactly what it was designed to do. Men are not rejecting women because we hate women. We are rejecting risk. False accusations, life ruining divorce settlements, the constant threat of being replaced the moment a better option comes along. Those are not small risks. Those are extinction level risks for the average man. And evolution gave men a very simple response to extinction level threats: shut it down, walk away, preserve resources, wait for conditions to improve. Conditions are not improving. So the shutdown continues. That is why you see study after study showing testosterone levels in Western men have fallen off a cliff in the last 40 years. That is why you see record numbers of young men reporting no sexual activity in the past year. That is why the birth rate in South Korea is now 0.72 children per woman and falling. This is not a glitch. This is the system working exactly as designed when the incentives flip. Women are now discovering that being the gatekeeper of sex only matters if men are still trying to get through the gate. When men stop knocking, the gate becomes irrelevant. And the gate is very, very quiet these days. The next 5 to 10 years are going to be a masterclass in consequences. As the economy continues to contract, as governments start cutting benefits they can no longer afford, as inflation keeps eating the purchasing power of whatever is left, the reality gap between what women were promised and what actually exists is going to become impossible to ignore. The strong, independent woman narrative only works when someone else is paying the bills. When the someone else stops paying, the narrative dies. And men are not going to ride to the rescue. Not this time. We already tried that. We tried being the good guy. We tried manning up. We tried providing even when we were told we were not needed, and we were punished for it. So this time we are trying something different. We are trying peace. We are trying freedom. We are trying life on our own terms. And so far it feels pretty good. The women who figure it out first, the ones who drop the entitlement, who bring genuine respect, loyalty, and femininity back to the table, those women will still find men willing to build something real. There will always be a market for quality. But the era of mass male subsidization of female lifestyle choices is over. The party lasted 50 years. The bill has arrived, and the men who used to pay it have left the restaurant. So when you see another TikTok of a woman crying because she cannot find a good man, Understand what you are really watching. You are watching the exact moment when decades of propaganda collides with unforgiving reality. You are watching the end of an era that was never sustainable in the first place, and you are watching the beginning of something new. Men are not broken. The system that needed us to stay broken just lost its power over us. And once enough men taste real freedom, real peace, real self ownership, there is no offer on earth that will make them volunteer to be slaves again. Winter is not coming. For a lot of people, winter is already here. The rest are just waiting for the first snow. The room is quiet now. The music stopped playing a long time ago. The people who spent years dancing on the table, telling everyone else how strong and independent they were, are finally looking around and realizing the table was built by men, paid for by men, maintained by men, and the men who used to stand there smiling while everyone danced have quietly walked outside to get some fresh air. And they are not coming back in. Not tonight, not next week, not ever. The party is still going, but the energy is different now. The lights are flickering, the drinks are running low. And a lot of the guests are starting to panic because they just noticed the people who always refilled the bar, fixed the sound system, paid the electric bill, and carried the drunk girls home are nowhere to be found. This is not anger anymore. This is the silence after the storm. This is the part where the men who figured it out first sit on the porch with a cold drink and watch the chaos unfold from a safe distance. We warned everybody. We made the videos. We wrote the books. We laid out the math in the simplest terms possible. We said, if you keep punishing men for being men, if you keep taxing them into oblivion, if you keep turning every institution into a weapon against them, eventually the cost benefit calculation flips and they will leave. And everybody laughed. The politicians laughed. The professors laughed. The blue check feminists laughed the loudest. They said men would never walk away because biology. They said men are controlled by their urges and would always come crawling back the moment a woman snapped her fingers. They said the thirst is eternal. They were wrong. The thirst is conditional, always has been. Nature never gave men unlimited desire. Nature gave men desire as a reward mechanism for behavior that increased survival and replication under healthy conditions. When the conditions become hostile, when pairing with a woman goes from a survival advantage to a survival threat, the mechanism does the one thing it was always designed to do. It shuts off, cold, clean, complete, no drama, no negotiation, just silence. And that silence is now deafening. Walk into any major city in the Western world right now, and you can feel it in the air. The dating apps are ghost towns for average men. The nightclubs that used to be packed wall to wall on Friday nights now have lines out the door made up almost entirely of women waiting to get in while the men stay home streaming fights and playing Call of Duty with their boys. The marriage industrial complex, the wedding venues, the jewelers, the honeymoon resorts, the entire multi-billion-dollar ecosystem built on the assumption that men would always line up to trade half their net worth for a depreciating asset and a 50% chance of losing their children, that ecosystem is collapsing faster than anyone wants to admit. Bridal magazines are going bankrupt. Wedding planners are pivoting to divorce parties because that is where the money is moving. The phrase, happy wife, happy life, has been replaced with keep your assets in a trust and your passport current. And still, the mainstream refuses to connect the dots. They keep running the same tired articles about where have all the good men gone. They keep inviting the same panel of six-figure career women to talk about how men just are not stepping up anymore. They keep pretending this is a crisis of masculinity instead of the most obvious incentive restructure in recorded history. When you spend half a century telling a group of people they are toxic for existing, when you build an entire legal and cultural framework designed to extract maximum resources from them while giving them maximum risk, eventually that group performs the simplest cost benefit analysis imaginable and decides the smart move is to opt out. And opting out has never been easier. Technology handed men the ultimate cheat code. Remote work means a man can live anywhere. Crypto means a man can bank anywhere. Passports from small countries mean a man can disappear anywhere. Fitness is free on YouTube. Game is free on YouTube. Financial education is free on YouTube. Brotherhood is one Discord invite away. For the first time in history, an average man with an average job and average looks can wake up one day, spend 6 months leveling up his money and his mindset, and within a year be living in a beach town in Southeast Asia surrounded by other men who made the same jump, dating women who actually like men, paying 30% of what he used to pay in rent, and laughing at the idea that he should go back to a society that spent years calling him human garbage. That is not a fantasy. That is the new normal for hundreds of thousands of men already, and millions more are in the pipeline. The women who spent the 2010s bragging about being the prize are now in their mid to late 30s making apology videos about how they were lied to by feminism. The ones who used to post memes about eating, pray love, and riding the carousel until Mr. Right magically appears with six figures and six-pack abs are now staring at fertility clinic price lists and wondering why the universe is so cruel. The ones who told men my body, my choice, while simultaneously demanding those same men pay for everything are now discovering that men have a choice too. And men are choosing peace over pieces, peace over the drama, peace over the court dates, peace over the child support garnishment, peace over coming home to a woman who resents him for existing, peace over financing Instagram lifestyles he is never invited to enjoy, peace over being the emotional and financial tampon for a society that only calls when it needs something fixed. The strong, independent woman was always a marketing campaign. It was never a survival strategy. Women were never designed to survive alone. They were designed to survive inside families, inside tribes, inside communities where men handled the dangerous jobs, the heavy lifting, and the protection from external threats. When you remove men from that equation and replace them with government bureaucracy, you create a temporary illusion of independence that only lasts as long as the bureaucracy has money to burn. The moment the money runs out, the illusion evaporates and biology reasserts itself with a vengeance. That is what we are watching right now. The greatest illusion in modern history is popping like a soap bubble, and the people who believed in it hardest are the ones screaming the loudest as reality comes rushing in. And the men who saw it coming are not cheering. Most of us are not even watching anymore. We built our boats. We sailed away from the island while the volcano was still just smoking. We can see the eruption from a safe distance, but we are not going back to pull anyone out of the lava. Not because we hate them, but because we already tried. We already warned them. We already laid out the escape plan in detail. And they laughed. They called us bitter. They called us losers. They said we would die alone. So we left. And now we are living better than we ever have, surrounded by brothers who actually care, dating women who actually value us, building wealth in ways the old system never allowed. The volcano is their problem now, and volcanoes do not negotiate. You can already see the first waves of desperation hitting the shore. Women in their late 30s and early 40s who spent their prime years chasing careers and alpha males are now flooding dating apps with their real ages turned off and filters turned to maximum, frantically trying to lock down any man with a pulse and a paycheck before the fertility window slams shut forever. The phrase settle down has quietly been replaced with secure the bag because everyone finally admits what this was always about: resources. The love was optional, the lifestyle was mandatory, but the bag is no longer available. The men who still have resources learn the hard way that giving them away is the fastest way to lose them. So they keep them, they invest them, they protect them, they enjoy them, and they watch from the sidelines as the same women who rejected them at 25 now swipe right at 38 with the energy of someone who just realized the plane is going down and any parachute will do. It is not pretty, but it was never supposed to be pretty. Consequences rarely are. The next decade is going to separate the women who are paying attention from the women who are posting thirst traps, the ones who drop the entitlement, who bring genuine peace, femininity, loyalty, and respect to the table. Those women will still find men willing to build something real. The market always rewards quality. But the era of mediocre women demanding exceptional men while offering nothing but attitude and debt is over. Dead, buried, gone. Men are not going back to the plantation. We tasted freedom. We felt what it is like to wake up without dread. We experienced life without the constant background noise of criticism and extraction. We discovered that peace is not the absence of war, it is the presence of boundaries. And once a man experiences true peace, there is no price you can pay him to return to chaos. So when the articles start coming out about the loneliness epidemic among women, when the think pieces drop about the crisis of unmarried, childless women in their 40s, when the government inevitably rolls out new incentives trying to trick men into marrying again, tax breaks, housing credits, whatever desperate bait they can think of, remember one thing. Men already saw the movie. We know how it ends, and we are not buying tickets to the sequel. We are building something new. Smaller circles, stronger bonds, real wealth, real health, real brotherhood, real purpose that does not require female approval to exist. And from where we are sitting, the view is spectacular. The old world is burning and the new one is already rising. And the men who walked away are not looking back. The next wave is already rolling in, and most people still have no idea how big it is going to be. We are not just talking about a few thousand guys living in Thailand or a couple million men refusing to get married. We are talking about a complete reordering of male priorities on a civilizational scale. The men who walked away first were the scouts. The men waking up right now are the infantry. And the men who will wake up over the next 5 to 10 years are going to be the majority. By the time this is finished, the default setting for most productive men under 50 will be some version of minimal participation in the old system, maximum investment in themselves and their brothers, and zero tolerance for anything that smells like the old deal. And the old deal is dead, whether people want to admit it or not. The old deal was simple: you work like a mule. You hand over your resources. You stay quiet when you are criticized. You accept being disposable. And in exchange, you get a family, respect, sex, legacy, and a reason to keep going when everything hurts. That deal was broken a long time ago, but most men kept honoring their side of it out of duty, out of hope, out of inertia. The moment enough men realized the other side never intended to honor their part, the contract was void. And once a contract is void, only a fool keeps performing. And so millions of men stopped performing. They did not riot. They did not burn cities down. They did not make demands. They simply withdrew their energy and watched what happened next. And what happened next was exactly what every rational observer knew would happen. Everything that depended on invisible male effort started to crack. The tax base shrank. The birth rate collapsed. The marriage rate fell off a cliff. The military started missing recruiting goals by tens of thousands every year. Infrastructure maintenance started falling behind. Innovation slowed in every sector that relied on men working insane hours for status and female approval. And the culture itself began to hollow out because the people who used to build and defend it no longer saw any reason to bleed for a society that spent decades telling them they were the problem. And still, the response from the top is denial and shame. They keep trying the same tired tactics that worked in the 1990s and 2000s. They keep telling men to man up. They keep running PSAs about toxic masculinity. They keep passing new laws to try and force men back into the harness. They keep pretending that if they just shame men hard enough, the old obedience will magically return. But obedience was never the foundation. The foundation was incentive. Remove the incentive and obedience disappears. It is that simple. You cannot shame a man who has already found peace. You cannot guilt a man who has already rebuilt his life around his own terms. You cannot threaten a man who has nothing left to lose and everything to protect. That is the new archetype. The man who has zero dependence, zero debt, multiple income streams, multiple passports, a tight circle of brothers, and no emotional attachment to a society that hates him. That man is bulletproof, and there are more of him every single day. The politicians see the tax revenue falling and panic. The corporations see the labor pool shrinking and panic. The universities see the male enrollment collapsing and panic. The military sees the recruiting crisis and panic. But instead of asking, the one asking why men are opting out, they double down on the same playbook that caused the opt out in the first place. They call men weak. They call men entitled. They call men fragile. They diagnose the symptom and prescribe more of the disease. It would be funny if it were not so predictable. Every collapsing society goes through the same stages. First, they mock the men who warn them. Then they punish the men who speak out. Then they ignore the men who leave. Then they beg the men to come back. Then they threaten the men who still refuse. And finally, they collapse because the men never return. We are somewhere between stage 4 and stage 5 right now, and the begging phase is going to be spectacular. You can already see the early versions of it. Articles about how we need to make marriage appealing to men again, politicians floating tax credits for married couples, dating coaches telling women they need to learn how to cook and be feminine again, pastors and imams and gurus of every stripe suddenly discovering that maybe traditional gender roles were not oppression after all. The same people who spent 20 years calling those roles patriarchal chains are now frantically trying to glue the chains back together because the ship is sinking and they finally notice there are not enough lifeboats. But the men who already left are not coming back for tax credits. They are not coming back for cooking videos. They are not coming back for promises of respect that will last exactly until the crisis is over and the old patterns reassert themselves. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me for 50 years, shame on me. The trust is gone. And trust does not grow back overnight. You cannot spend half a century teaching an entire generation of men that they are inherently violent, inherently privileged, inherently toxic, inherently guilty just for being born, and then act surprised when those same men decide they have no obligation to save the people who spent their whole lives attacking them. That is not how human nature works. Human nature runs on reciprocity. Break reciprocity long enough, and the bond is severed forever. So when the next economic crisis hits, and it is coming, when the debt bubble finally pops, when the welfare states start cutting benefits, when the currency keeps losing value, when the cities become unlivable and the suburbs become unaffordable, do not be surprised when the men who could have fixed it are nowhere to be found. They will be in Thailand or Portugal or Colombia or Dubai or a small town in the mountains with Starlink and solar panels, living well on half the income they used to make, surrounded by people who actually value them, watching the news the same way people watch a documentary about a civilization that no longer exists. Because that is what the West is becoming, a documentary. A cautionary tale about what happens when you take the most productive group in society, tell them they are the source of all evil, extract maximum resources from them while giving them maximum risk, and then act shocked when they peacefully withdraw their consent and build something better somewhere else. History is going to look back at this period and marvel at how fast it all fell apart once the incentives flipped. They will write books about the great male exodus. They will make documentaries about the fertility collapse. They will study the collapse of marriage the same way we study the fall of Rome. And the conclusion will be brutally simple. A society that hates its men does not get to keep its men. And a society that does not keep its men does not get to keep its future. The men who understand this are already living in the future. The men who still do not understand are about to get a very harsh education. And the women who spent the last 2 decades celebrating their independence are about to discover that independence was never free. Someone else was always paying the bill. And the someone else just closed the tab and walked out. There is still time for individuals to adapt. There is still time for individual women to drop the ideology, rebuild their femininity, and offer real value to men who have options. There is still time for individual men who are still asleep to wake up, get their money right, get their body right, get their mind right, and join the exodus before the doors close. But the window is narrowing every single day. The lifeboats are leaving the ship one by one, and once they are gone, they are gone. This is not revenge. This is not punishment. This is physics, action and reaction, incentives and consequences. You cannot declare war on biology for 50 years and expect biology to just take it lying down. Biology always wins in the end. Always. So, to every man still grinding away in the old system, still hoping it will get better, still believing that if he just works harder, the respect will come back, I say this with love. Stop. Look around. The game is over. The rules changed permanently. The people who changed the rules are now screaming because they finally realized the new rules only work until the men leave. And the men are leaving. Build your boat, pack your skills, secure your resources, find your brothers, and sail toward the horizon where the weather is clear and the people still understand how reality actually works. The storm is here for some, the calm is here for others. Choose which side of history you want to be on. The collapse is not going to look like the movies. There will be no mushroom clouds, no zombies in the streets, no dramatic martial law announcement that makes everyone finally understand the game is over. It is going to be slow, quiet, and soul crushing for the people who refuse to see it coming. It is going to look like empty grocery aisles that never get restocked because the truck drivers walked off the job. It is going to look like power outages that last weeks because the linemen who used to work 60-hour storm weeks are now living in Panama. It is going to look like hospitals that cannot keep the lights on because the taxes that used to pay the electric bill disappeared when half the male workforce downshifted to 1,099 cash gigs. It is going to look like entire neighborhoods of McMansions sitting vacant because the divorce rate hit 70%, and the men who used to pay the mortgages finally said enough. Most of all, it is going to look like silence, the silence of men who no longer argue, the silence of men who no longer explain, the silence of men who no longer care whether you approve of their choices. That silence is the sound of a civilization dying, because every civilization that ever existed was built on the voluntary effort of men who believed their sacrifice was worth it. Remove the belief and you remove the effort. Remove the effort and you remove the civilization. It is that simple and it is that final. And we are already deep into the removal phase. Every single day, another 1,000 men wake up, look at the news, look at their bank account, look at the dating apps, look at the latest horror story from family court, and make the same decision. I am done subsidizing this. They cancel the dating app subscriptions. They close the social media accounts that only feed them rage bait. They move the money into cold storage or offshore accounts. They get a second passport. They learn Spanish or Thai or Portuguese. They join private men's groups that operate like underground railroads for the modern era. They disappear in plain sight. And the system registers it as just another data point in the men are failing narrative, never understanding that the men are not failing. The system is failing to keep them. The system never imagined men could coordinate without leaders, without organizations, without a manifesto. But the internet gave men something more powerful than any of those things: perfect information. Every man can now see exactly what happened to the men who came before him. He can read the divorce horror stories. He can watch the body cam footage of men being dragged out of their homes over child support they cannot pay. He can see the statistics on male suicide, male homelessness, male workplace deaths. And he can see the hundreds of thousands of men who already exited and are now living better than they ever did inside the machine. All of that information is one click away, 24 hours a day. And once a man sees it, he cannot unsee it. That is the real red pill. Not anger, not bitterness, just clarity. Cold, brutal, irreversible clarity. And clarity is spreading like wildfire. Like you can feel it in the comment sections. You can feel it in the private discords. You can feel it in the way young men now talk about marriage, the same way previous generations talked about joining the mob. Yeah, some guys make a lot of money, but look what happens when they try to leave. You can feel it in the way the phrase "it's just your turn" went from a fringe red pill saying to common knowledge among men under 30. You can feel it in the way gym memberships are exploding while marriage rates are imploding. Men are not giving up. Men are upgrading. They are upgrading their bodies, their bank accounts, their passports, their brotherhoods, and their standards. And the one thing they are not upgrading is their tolerance for being treated like disposable utilities. That is the part the old system still refuses to understand. Men do not need the system anymore. The system needs men. Always has. Always will. Men build the grid. Men drill the oil. Men haul the freight. Men write the code. Men enforce the laws. Men fix the pipes when they burst at 3 a.m. in February. Men are 98% of workplace deaths, 93% of the homeless, 80% of suicides, and 100% of the reason anything works at all. And for 50 years, the system told those men they were the problem while simultaneously depending on them to keep showing up every day. So they stopped showing up, not all at once, not with press conferences or marches or demands, just one man at a time, quietly restructuring his life until the system no longer had access to his energy. Multiply that by 10 million, and you have a revolution no one can arrest, no one can negotiate with, and no one can stop it. And the revolution has rules now. Rule 1, never subsidize your own destruction. Rule 2, never argue with people who profit from your confusion. Rule 3, never return to a burning building just because someone inside is yelling that it is your job to save them. Those rules are written in the private chats, the private forums, the private telegram groups that the mainstream will never be invited to. Those rules are being followed by men who make six figures and men who live on $2,000 a month in Bali. Those rules are being followed by 25-year-olds who have never had a girlfriend and 55-year-olds who lost everything in divorce court. The rules work for everyone because the rules are rooted in reality, not ideology. And reality is the one thing the collapsing system no longer has on its side. Reality says a society that cannot reproduce itself dies. Reality says a society that cannot protect its men will not keep its men. Reality says a society that replaces families with government bureaucracy will run out of other people's money. Reality says when you make peace unattractive, you make war inevitable. And the war that is coming is not between men and women, it is between reality and delusion never wins. The men who understand this are already on the winning side. They are calm, they are focused, they are stacking resources and skills instead of stacking regrets. They are not waiting for society to apologize. They are not waiting for women to suddenly become traditional. They are not waiting for the government to fix anything. They are building their own arcs while the floodwaters rise. And when the water gets high enough, the people still standing on the old ground screaming for help will finally understand that the men they spent decades telling to go away actually listened. There is poetry in that. There is justice in that. And there is peace in that. Because the men who walk away are not walking toward chaos, they are walking toward sovereignty. They are walking toward brotherhood that is earned, not demanded. They are walking toward standards that actually mean something. They are walking toward a life where their effort is rewarded instead of punished. And once a man gets far enough down that path, the old world starts to look like a bad dream he finally woke up from. So let the old world burn if it has to. Let the people who broke it scream while it collapses. Let the ones who laughed when men warned them discover what laughter sounds like when there is no one left to fix the mess. The men who saw it coming are already gone, and the future belongs to the men who refuse to die for a society that refused to let them live. What did you think about all of this? Do you see the same patterns I see? Are you one of the men who already walked away? Or are you still trying to decide? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. Like the video if it hit home. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And if this one woke you up, share it with every man who still needs to hear it. And just remember that all roads lead to MWA, men walking away, and cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing says you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.